My Bigfoot sighting happened in Lane County, Oregon. My name is Delanya Clarkson, and in 2008, I lived in Cottage Grove, Oregon, which is on the side of I-5, a little south of Eugene, about, I would say, 15 minutes south of Eugene. Between Cottage Grove and Eugene, which is a pretty major city, it's where University of Oregon is, there is a little town called Creswell. And so you can go from Cottage Grove north to Creswell on I-5, which is a main highway. It's a super main highway that goes from, I believe, possibly like Washington all the way down to California. It's a pretty major highway. But there's parallel back roads that you can go from Cottage Grove to Creswell. And Cottage Grove is a little town to Creswell that parallel I-5. And so in 2008, about the end of September, like the beginning of October, I had an interview at the Creswell Golf Club. And so it's this golf club, which is basically a driving range. And I think it was like a 9-hole, and it had like a clubhouse. And it was along a road, a back road that went from Cottage Grove north to Creswell. And it was on the east side of the road with a hill behind the driving range, just, trees. And those hills go on forever, like with trees. And then on the west side of it, there's a 2-lane road that parallels I-5 that goes from Cottage Grove to Creswell. One lane going one way and the other way going the other way. And so to set it up, like the golf clubhouse is on the east side of the road, and on the west side of the road is a parking lot. So I was driving to the golf club for an interview at about 10:30 in the morning. And I was in a Land Rover. And my boyfriend at the time was a hunter, and that was his hunting rig. And so it was decked out. It had like racks on top and racks in front of it. It was a, he decked out car. It was not a little car. So I took that back road from Cottage Grove to the golf club, and it's before the country club. Well, it's a golf club kind of deal. And it's before you hit the actual town of Creswell. And so the parking lot to this club is on the west side across the 2-lane road from it. And so it's kind of pushed up on a knoll. So it's like a bunch of land kind of pushed up, and it's just a gravel parking lot, or it was at that time. And between I-5 and the road, it goes down. So if you're heading to Cottage Grove from Creswell going south, I-5 is on your right, and it goes down on the side of the road that runs parallel to it. It goes kind of down into a ravine, and there's some woods there, and there's people's plots of land, and you can hear I-5, and on the parallel road, bits and pieces, you can sometimes see it. And that comes not kind of into play, but I thought it was odd, and I'll explain later with that. But so like 10:30 in the morning, I pull into this gravel parking lot, and there's like a couple cars there. I mean, it's pretty early. I'm there for an interview for just being a waitress there at the clubhouse. And because it's like late September, there's still kind of a haze of like a fog that hasn't quite burned off yet. And so I'm getting out of the Land Rover, and I remember I have my resume in my hands, and I'm shutting the car door behind me. And as I do this, I'm turning to walk toward the building, which is on the other side of just this 2-lane road through the gravel parking lot. And I sweep my eyes, as you would do, as you turn, you just kind of look. And I see, so there's, since I'm kind of up on a knoll, the parking lot is, you can kind of see down to on the side of the road, and it goes down to kind of this ravine, and there's some trees. You can kind of see down because you're up at an upper point of view. And so there was definitely like a major tree line that went down from like on the side of the road, drops down in kind of this ravine, and it went through or the side of people's lands. And I'm assuming eventually to I-5. And so I assume there's a creek there, right? Because there's like an abundance of trees, like just, you could clearly see it. And so as I'm like getting out of my car and shutting the door, and I'm, turning to walk, and my eyes are sweeping around, I see this, what looks like fir trees that are on, along this creek, what I assume is a creek, creek. And as I'm turning, I see this tree double up in size. Like it unfolds, like it stands up. And if it hadn't done that at that exact moment, I would have never seen that. I would have never seen it because it was so well camouflaged. It wouldn't have happened. But at that moment, I saw it double in size. Now, I have been scared a lot of times in my life, and we've all been in scary situations, but I'll tell you what, I have never, ever felt terror the way that I felt terror at that second. Never before that, and never since then. It was like a gut check, like, like I can still remember me breathing, just, what is that? And it was something that my mind it couldn't compete. Like I couldn't compute it. Like I didn't understand. It was massive. Like it was so like suddenly, like as it unfolds, I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like probably a good 50 to 75 yards away from it. And I see kind of like its arms as I'm looking at it. And I don't know how long this was. It just seconds, but it felt a lot longer. And I'm looking at it and like I begin to see the outline of its kind of arms hanging to the side. And you could see the fur in its like around its face. And I couldn't see its face. I didn't look long enough to even begin to try to decipher all those details. That wasn't happening. But the fur around its face was lighter fur. It was like a orangutan, kind of like a reddish fur, and it was darker around that. And I remember thinking a million thoughts at that second, like, what is that? You know, like what is that? You know, and I've seen bears in my life. I'm not an avid hunter. I'm not a all out woodsman. I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland, Oregon. You know, I wouldn't call myself an urbanite, but I'm definitely not, you know, a forestry person, but I've camped out and, you know, I've done all that, but I've seen bears. I've seen a black bear in South Lake Tahoe. I've seen a grizzly. That was no bear. The magnitude of this thing was just, I don't know. And it was just insane. I didn't know what to think of it. I didn't understand what was happening right then. All I could think of was, what is that? And then thinking, oh, this Range Rover isn't going to do it. This isn't going to hold. This is going to do it. And then thinking immediately after that, can I make it from where I'm at to that building across that 2-lane road before that thing makes it here? And I'm thinking that could make it here in 3 strides. You know, like this thing can just walk right over these fence lines. I'm saying this is not, and I remember just, it's a fight or flight. I booked it. I just slammed my door and ran. And it wasn't a long distance, you know, across this gravel parking lot, a 2-lane road. There's the clubhouse. The whole time I was running, I absolutely knew something was going to grab me. It didn't happen, but I knew in my mind, like I was just waiting for whatever that was to grab the back of my shirt. In my mind, I knew that's going to happen. It had to have seen me. How could it not have seen me? I saw it. What that thing could get here, and it should be here right now. That's how fast, like that's how big that thing is. And I got into the clubhouse. I remember closing the door behind me, and there was maybe like a couple employees in there. And I'm thinking as I'm looking around the clubhouse, oh no, this is not big enough. This is not going to do it. And I remember asking, does anyone have a gun? And then I remember telling someone there's something huge out there. I don't know what that is, because growing up, yeah, you heard about Sasquatch or Bigfoot, but in Beaverton, Oregon, which is it's a suburb, that didn't really affect me. It didn't affect my life in any kind of way. I was agnostic toward Bigfoot. I didn't believe one way or another because it didn't really affect my life, you know? So seeing this thing, like, you know, at first I didn't understand what it was. I didn't go straight to Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Because that wasn't a mainframe in my life. I just didn't understand what could be that huge. So me and this employee walked across to the parking lot, and it's gone. It's gone, you know, and I didn't get that job, but I remember being so terrified that I didn't take that back road home. I went all the way to the town of Creswell and took I-5, that freeway, home. I called my boyfriend, who's a hunter at that time. He was an avid hunter. He's a big hunter. And I told him what I saw, and he's like, oh yeah, you saw Bigfoot. And I'm like, what? Like, what? So this is a thing? Like, so this is a thing, you know? And he was really nonchalant. And I didn't really get into depth with him after that, because again, like this wasn't, it scared me enough at that moment not to take that road back. It scared me enough to go into a place where I had an interview and ask if someone had a gun, which you would never hear those words come out of my mouth. I mean, that is not where I go to. That's how much it scared me to do, like, asking these things that would never have come up in any other conversation, especially before an interview. This is like the last thing I want anyone to see is me like freaked out over something huge I saw out there. And even when I told this to my boyfriend, I was like, what? That was so close to, I mean, I-5, they're that close to the freeway, you know? And, you know, like what? Like, I just assumed that they were out in the middle of some, I don't know, like way out in the middle of the woods or something. I was pretty naive to it. And to think, I told him and his family, his mom, and they were all big hunters, and it just seemed like it was a thing. No big deal. Yeah, there's Bigfoot. They're out there. And after that experience, indulge. Like I went on with my life. I still went camping. It didn't affect me. It didn't terrorize me. But again, I was 75 yards from it, looking up on the knoll. If I had been closer to it, that I assume that it would affect me greatly, because it affected me enough where I oftentimes wonder now, as I think about it, like, did I really see what I saw, or was that just a trick of my mind? But what keeps me knowing that is I never felt that terror ever before that or after that. It was some kind of terror that goes to the depth of your soul, where you're just like, I don't understand what I'm seeing. This is not, what is this, And having it be such a large magnitude at that time, like, oh my God, this thing could crush me. I don't have any defenses. Even, what possible thing could defend against this? This could make it here in no time. Like, that scared me at that moment. But afterwards, I still went camping with my friends. It didn't really impair my life one way or another. I'm not going to say I'm a believer, because I saw one. So I know they're out there. I saw it. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't anything else than what I saw and the way that I felt. That's how I know. And so in the last couple of years, it wasn't something I didn't tell people, but it wasn't something that I kind of categorized it or like logged it somewhere, but it was not something that I would remember right away and say, hey, check this experience out, or have kept it a secret. Like, I don't want to tell anyone because they're going to think weirdly of me. That it really wasn't a major part of my life in any kind of way where I would have to do one way or another on that. But in the last year or so, I've been talking to a couple of friends of mine, and one of my friends live in Oak Ridge, Oregon, which is east of Cottage Grove. And so there's been a lot of sightings near Oak Ridge, Oregon. And she didn't see one, but she had camped out in Oak Ridge, and in the middle of the night, her and her boyfriend heard a bipedal thing walk past their tent. And they were camped out. She said, we were on private land, her father-in-law's or boyfriend's father's land. And way back there's no way that someone could have been on that land. She said, and it brushed against our tent. And the smell, she said, was ridiculously horrid. And so that's her. I mean, it wasn't a sighting by her, but it was definitely an experience like out in Oak Ridge. So she and I, I talked to a couple of my friends just because it kind of came up in a roundabout way. And then I've just talked about it a little bit more to people. And I kind of, on YouTube, I was just kind of checking things out, watching Bigfoot stuff. And I don't know why I'm talking about it or more so, or if it's more in my life, because it really isn't than it has before, since 2008. But there's not really a stigma that I see in Oregon about it. At least, the times that I have talked about it, I haven't had anyone laugh at me. I haven't had anyone, people just seem to accept it more, I guess, in the Pacific Northwest, what I've been seeing on the Bigfoot shows. And I think it's interesting that I see these shows where people are trying to get a sighting for years. These people seem to be running around trying to get sightings. And I guess when I've been talking about it more, because I didn't realize it was such a rare thing until I started watching these YouTube shows. I didn't go into researching it because I know that it's there. So to me, researching something that I don't know what research would be done about it, for me, at least, I do feel kind of, I would say, privileged to be able to see one, because as I now see it, it's, I guess, a pretty rare thing. And as I'm getting older, I'm feeling a little more, I guess, grateful for that experience. I mean, it was pretty horrific at the time, in the sense, I wouldn't say horrific, I would say terrorizing. It's not horrific. I wasn't in horror. I was in more of a, what? Just terror of I don't understand. My mind can't compute what this doesn't, I don't understand what this is right now. And so my friend that had that experience, or whatever you want to call it, not a sighting, in Oak Ridge, she still goes out and camps. It hasn't affected her life either at all. And so I haven't got really into research. I'm not obsessive with the Bigfoot. I see a lot, I've seen kind of on shows, and I don't have any friends that are really into that, but acknowledge that it's out there and still go out camping and do it their daily life. I don't know if that would be different if I had seen it at a closer setting. I only assume that the more close you get to it, the bigger it is, and the more terrifying that would be to me. The terror that I felt from where I was adrenaline and terrorizing enough. So I can't even imagine how that would be the closer that you get. So that, yeah, that's my Bigfoot experience. And I am pretty grateful for it. Again, I have to say, because I guess, I just assumed that random people saw it randomly and it was just kind of a, whatever it was or it wasn't. I don't know. But now that I have seen one, I've never seen anything like it. I've never felt any kind of terror like that. And I've been in some pretty scary situations since then where this terror that I felt was a gut check. Just, I don't know. I guess it was really hard for me to wrap my mind around something that I don't understand what that is, and how big it was to see like a fir tree that I thought was a fir tree. Cause that's what I initially thought, to see it unfold as I'm glancing by. Cause there were fir trees on either side of it, but that thing unfolded. It became two in one. Like it just unfolded up. Like it became like a tree upon a tree. Like it was like it doubled in size. And I just think, wow, what are the odds? What are the odds of me glancing around and just seeing it do it at that 1 second? Because if I hadn't seen it unfold, I would have never seen that. I would have never seen, because it was so well camouflaged. I would have never seen that. So I wonder, did it see me? I don't know. Did it do that on purpose, or just was that a casual thing? I don't even know. But I know that when we went back out there to look at it, it was gone. And I didn't imagine that, because why would I? You know what I'm saying? I was going there for an interview. I'm like, what? Which maybe I didn't get because I was freaking everybody out when I went in there asking people for if someone had a gun, So yeah, that's it. That's all I really got to say.